Hi everybody, happy National or International Scrapbook Day 2025. This is a project that I designed and actually did today, May 3rd, 2025 for International Scrapbook Day. And I have a free tutorial available for you to follow. This is a simple photo folio and I am just using up scraps from the Mintay photographer paper collection. So this is a collection that I won from a Mintay Papers Facebook challenge, and I already made a camera mini album with it. So if you followed that tutorial and made that project, you will have enough paper left over to make this one as well. You can also use a different paper collection, and it's a great way to use up scraps. So go ahead and grab some of those scraps that you have on hand and join me for the tutorial. To start, we are going to cut some chipboard. We're going to need two pieces that measure 4.5 by 8 inches, one piece that measures 1 inch by 8 inch, one piece that measures 3/4 by 8, and one piece that measures 3.5 by 8. We also need to cut two pieces of cardstock, whatever color matches your project. These pieces measure 8 inches by 9 inches. And then you're also going to need to cut two pieces of cardstock that measure 7.5 by 7 3/4 of an inch. And we're going to set these aside for now. And we're going to use the larger pieces and we're going to connect them together. So I am running my double-sided tape on the edge of one of my 9-inch sides. And then I'm going to use my grid here on my desk to be able to line this up to get it as straight as I can. Now with these two pieces connected, we're going to take our pieces here. So we've got our first 4.5 by 8 inch piece. Then we have our 1 inch piece, our 4.5 by 8 inch piece, our 3/4 inch piece, and our 3.5 by 8 inch piece. We are going to place these on here and we need to have 1/8 of an inch gap between these pieces. If it's smaller than the thickness, 2 times the thickness of your chipboard, it will crack whenever you go to close your book. So you can use the chipboard to measure and draw a line. I typically just use my ruler and will measure this. So when I go to adhere this down, I will place my ruler here and then measure so that I have my 1/8 inch gaps. So I'm just going to start with one of these pieces and apply my adhesive. And once I have my first piece down, I'm going to take my second piece. This is my 1 inch spine and apply my adhesive here to the back side. And I have my ruler down here for 2 reasons. One, it's going to help me measure that 1/8 inch gap. Make sure that it's 1/8 or a little bit larger, not smaller. But it's also, the ruler is down here to help me make sure that both of my pieces, the edges are lined up straight because they're both touching the edge of my ruler. Now, once it is down, I'm going to burnish this. And then I'm going to continue with my remaining 3 pieces the same exact way, applying my adhesive and then using my ruler to make sure that I have 1/8 inch gap between those pieces and that these edges are straight. Once all of my pieces are down, I'm going to use my scissors to miter the ends of my corners, but I'm going to leave about 1/8 of an inch past those corners so that I can wrap those corners fully. If you don't, those corners will stick out whenever we do the next step. So you need to leave a little bit of room. Now I'm going to start here on this shorter end and use my bone folder to wrap my paper up and around this edge. Then I'll apply my adhesive here. And then I'll burnish this down on top of my chipboard to wrap that first edge. I'm going to repeat that step on the second shorter side. Once I have both of my shorter sides wrapped, I can go ahead and flip up on my longer sides. But before I actually adhere those ones down, I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to make sure that around all of these corners, the paper goes around that corner. So you can take your bone folder, run it down your chipboard, and then just slightly press it around. And then I like to just go in here from the side as well to get it to curve around. Once you have that paper curving around your corners, you can go ahead and use your bone folder here to crease these sides so that they come up over that edge. And then just like with the smaller sides, we're just going to take our adhesive and apply it on the 1/2 inch tab here. And then we're just going to fold this over so that it adheres to the chipboard and wraps these longer edges. Now that all the sides are covered, I'm just going to take my bone folder in here into these creases, just to crease this paper into my folds. And then I'm going to be taking my two 7.5 inch pieces and I'm going to be placing them here to cover the inside. And there will be that seam here that will be towards the center of one of my bigger panels. Once the paper is on here, I'm going to just go ahead and run my bone folder down my creases here between my chipboard pieces. You don't want to do this too hard and pierce through the paper, so just be careful when you are doing this. And then I'm going to go ahead and lift up on my pieces to create that booklet. So now what happens is I've got my little folio that folds like this. Now this is what my folio base is going to look like when it's constructed and ready to go. So because this spine is a little bit smaller, there's a little bit of room here. There's more room down in this bottom portion. There are going to be 3 panels to place your flaps. And I have 3 different size flaps that I'm going to be placing in my folio. So if you are choosing to follow this exactly how I am, you will cut your papers the way I do, but you don't have to. So I'm going to show you the different options to start. For this panel over here, these are wallet size flaps in the portrait orientation. So I have 6 of these, and these measure 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. On the 5 1/4 inch side, they're scored at 1/2 inch. I did use a very small corner rounder on the bottom corners to round those corners. These are going to go here. So I'm going to have my photo mats there that are all this size. That's what size this panel was designed for. These 2 panels, though, you've got some options. You can place these, if you like this style, you can place these here in the 3 by 4. So a 3 by 4 wallet size photo will go here with a strip of paper at the bottom. But they were designed for the wallet size in the landscape orientation. So I have 8 of these pieces. They measure 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. And these are scored on one side at 1/2 inch, and then the bottom 2 corners are rounded. So these will fit right inside of here with a small border down each side. And I have enough that's going to go all the way to the bottom. You can place another set of these here if you want to place another set of 8 in the wallet landscape orientation. Or what I'm going to do is I have some larger flaps, and these are for 4x6 photos. So I only have 3 of them. They measure 4 1/4 by 7 1/4. On the 7 1/4 inch side, they're scored at 1/2 inch, and the bottom 2 corners are rounded. So then these will fit here. And I've only got 3 of them because when they are on the page, that's all that will actually fit. And the other reason is because when this is closed, there's not a ton of room between this front cover and this one that flips over. So we don't want to put too much stuff in here to where it's too bulky and then it can't close and your little folio starts to get that too wide of a spine over here. So I'm going to be careful about what I put on this side. So the bulk of my stuff is going to go here. That's where I have those 8 flaps here. And then here I've got my 6 smaller portrait style flaps. So at this point you want to decide what size flaps you're going to cut out your pieces, and then next we're going to start assembling. I'm going to be starting with my flaps for my left-hand panel. These are my full-size 4x6 photos. Now what I did for each of my flaps was I did fold back on those score lines to create my tabs. And I'm going to just place my adhesive here on the back side of my first 1/2 inch tab piece. And then I'm going to adhere this here so that it is centered on the panel and just a little tiny bit from the top edge of the folio. And then I will take my bone folder and burnish this down. And next I'm going to take my second flap and apply adhesive to that 1/2 inch tab on the back side here. And for this one, I'm going to use this score line and line it up with this bottom edge of the piece that I just put on. But before I adhere it down, I'm going to close that top flap to make sure that the edges on the sides are lined up, and move this bottom piece until it is straight. And then I'm going to burnish it down. If you don't do that, a lot of times your flaps might be slightly crooked, so those edges on the sides will not be lined up and it doesn't look as neat when it's done. I'm going to open up my second flap here and then bring in my third flap. I'll apply my adhesive to my third flap, and then again, same thing. I'm going to use that score line to line it up with that tab that's already on the page. Then I'm going to fold down both of my flaps, line up those edges, and then I will burnish this one down. And then you have about 1/4 inch from the bottom edge of the flap to the bottom edge of the folio. For this center panel, I am using my 8 landscape orientation flaps. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did on the first panel, taking my very first flap in this size, applying my adhesive here, and then I'm going to place this here in the center of the panel, making sure that it is just below that top edge of my folio, and then I'll burnish this down. Once this one is burnished down, I will take my second flap. I'm going to apply my adhesive to that back side. And then again, using that score line, I'm going to place it down here, close the flap above it so that my edges on the sides are lined up, and then I will press this down. Now I'm going to take my time and do the rest of these flaps the same way. And every time I place a flap down, I'm going to fold down all of the ones that were placed on previously to make sure everything is lined up. Once all of these flaps are on, we're going to come over here to the right hand flap. And again, we're going to repeat that same exact process. So we're going to take our first flap for this panel, and now we're going to apply this here into the center, again making sure that it's just below that top edge, and burnish this down. Now I'm going to take the remaining pieces, just like I've done with the previous two panels. I will apply my adhesive to my 1/2 inch tabs. Use that score line to line it up with the tab above it. Close that flap and then burnish this down. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my flaps in, and then I will come back and show you the final product. So this is all of my flaps on all of my panels here. And when I close this flap here and then this flap here, if you pull it up like this, you will see, it's going to be hard to see on camera, but you should be able to see on your own that these flaps, there is enough room in here to add my decorative papers, and everything will still close properly. So I'm going to start with the cover. I'm going to be using a ribbon closure. So I have 2 pieces cut. This is graphic 45. It is about 11 inches long. And I'm going to just first place one here off the side on the right. And this is in the center of my little booklet. Then I'm going to flip over to the back side, and I'm going to adhere one off the side here and lining these two up so that they will meet evenly when I go to tie this closed. Now, if you are using the same collection that I'm using, if you did my Mintay camera album, you'll have all the same papers left over. So I'm just using up my scraps. I have this piece here that I've cut. It is 4.5 by 7 3/4, and I'm going to place it right down here on the back side. Now flipping over to the front, I have this, and I've cut into this full sheet of paper. It's the same exact sheet as the back side, but this was the full sheet. And I have cut this to 4.25 by 7 3/4. I'll be placing this here on the front. Once I have my covers on, I'm just going to go ahead and open this whole thing flat. Now from my scraps, I have cut these pieces here. So the first one, it's just slightly less than 1 inch by 7 3/4. And I'm going to place this here on the larger spine. And then this one is 3/4 by 7 3/4. And I'm going to place this one here on this spine. And then for this piece here, I have this part that I had left over. I have trimmed it down so it's 3 1/4 inches, I believe. No, it's 3 3/8 by 7 1/4. And I am going to place this one here on this inside panel. Once all of this is covered, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to the inside, and I have cut some scraps again. So this first piece is just slightly under 1 inch by 7 3/4 for this spine here. And then this piece is just a little bit less than 3/4 by 7 3/4, and this one is going to go here. For the front cover, I'm going to be surrounding my image with black so it pops off of this paper. So I have a piece that's 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. I have taken this piece from one of the cut aparts and I just fussy cut around it. So this is going to be my main image. I've taken this from the fussy cutting sheet. I'm going to pop it behind here. I have this from my die cut assortment, and if you've used these for your album, you can also cut this from the fussy cutting sheet left over from the paper pack. I have my camera also from that die cut assortment pack. And then I've taken this flower here, this flower piece, and I've just cut this one little piece off because I wanted to add some flower up here, but I didn't want the whole entire thing to be wasted behind my other images. And I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to tuck it down here like this. So I'm going to tuck it under her and then I'm going to bring it over the frame here, just working with what I have since that piece was cut off. And I'm going to fit this all onto my black layer so that I can fussy cut around this. So I'm just basically making sure that in the 4 1/4 inch part I have enough room. So I'm just going to come in here and arrange these and play around with them. Then I'm going to adhere them down and fussy cut around this, and then I will stick this to the front cover. Once I put my piece on the front cover, I added the sticker photo, and then I cut love from this love through the lens and just put that there. And that's all I'm going to be putting on my front cover. Next, we're going to move on to the inside and we're going to start covering these flaps in here. Now I have taken the 12 by 12 paper. This was the side that I had left. I've cut this to 4 1/4 by 6 1/2. It's going to go here, but I'm not going to adhere it down yet. This one measures 4 1/4 by 4 1/4, and I'm going to be placing this one down here. Then this one is 3 1/4 by 5 3/8, and I'm going to be placing this one here. But before I place these down, I'm going to be placing some closures. Now, instead of doing closures from cardstock, I'm going to be doing closures from ribbon so that it matches. The first ribbon that I have is about 4 1/2 inches long, and my ribbon is about 3/4 of an inch wide. That way I can hide my magnet with my ribbon. So I am going to be placing this at the bottom here. I'm just going to be adhering this down, and then it's going to fold over that top portion. So I'm only going to be adhering down about 1/2 inch of my ribbon, and I'm going to center it in this panel here where the flaps are. And so I'm going to be centering all of my ribbons. So if you want to mark all of yours now, you can do that. I will take my ribbon end here and apply my adhesive. And then I'm just going to set this down here. Now I'm going to take this paper and adhere it down here to cover the end of my ribbon. My next piece for the middle is 6 inches long, and I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So I will apply my adhesive to about 1/2 inch on the end of my ribbon. And then I'm going to adhere it down here to the bottom of my page, or to the bottom of my folio. And then I will take this piece and cover the end of the ribbon. Then for my third piece, I have a piece that's about 5 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to apply my adhesive to the end of this ribbon and adhere it down here to the center on the bottom of my folio, and then I'll place this paper on the top portion covering the ribbon end. Next, I'm going to be covering the front of each of these flaps, and then I'll be placing magnets. So from the scraps that I had left over, they're all the same paper, but they are just scraps, however I could cut them. So this one is 4 inches by 6 1/2. I rounded the bottom 2 corners, and it is going to go here on the front of this flap. Then this piece is 4 inches by 3 1/2 inches. Bottom 2 corners are rounded, and it's going to go here. Then this piece is 3 inches by 4.5 inches. Bottom 2 corners are rounded, and it is going to go here. For this flap, I have this from the cut apart paper. I just fussy cut around it. Then I have this from the cut apart sheet. It is the same size as this. If you remember me doing this on my camera album, I hid my magnet behind this, so it was the same thing on top of here. But I'm going to be backing this piece onto black so that it will stand out a little bit more from my paper. I am going to place my magnet here first. So just taking a small piece of adhesive, I'm going to apply my magnet here, kind of in the center of that camera piece. And then I will adhere this down, and then I'm going to fussy cut around it with a small black border. So I'm going to now take my adhesive and just adhere this to the center of that flap. Now with the adhesive on the magnet, I'm going to go ahead and stretch my ribbon up here and then press the magnet into the ribbon. Now this is going to go here, so I do need to cut this ribbon down a little bit so that when this is on there, it won't stick up past it. And then I'm going to be backing this with some black cardstock as well. So first what I'm going to do is place my magnet closure right back on there. I'm going to apply my adhesive on top of my ribbon at this point where I know that lens is going to sit. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to press that down onto my ribbon to adhere the ribbon to that piece. And then I have a piece of my black cardstock here. I'm going to apply adhesive now to this side. And then I'm going to adhere it down right here to my black cardstock, and then I'm going to fussy cut around this so it's the exact shape as my lens. So this is what my back side of my closure looks like, and then it will just attach to this one. Now for this side, I'm using another one of those pieces from the cut apart. I've got my magnet here. I'm going to adhere this down and fussy cut around this first. And then from my fussy cutting sheet, I have another one of these lenses. It's just a little tiny bit smaller than this one, but that's okay. We will make it work. I did add it to the center of the flap. I have my second magnet now on my first one with my adhesive. I've already trimmed my ribbon so that it is shorter than what I'd had it before. So I'm going to press it down here into the center to adhere this down to my ribbon end. Then I'm going to take my adhesive, apply it to this front or top side of the ribbon around where the lens is, and then I will take this one and set it right on top. So I can adhere the ribbon to the camera lens. And now I will take my adhesive, apply it to the back side of this piece, and take another piece of my cardstock to adhere this down, and then I'm going to fussy cut around that lens. Now once this one is on, I'm going to come over here for this one, and I'm going to use this piece from the cut apart card. I did try to round it as much as I possibly could, although the side, because the way it was on the cut apart, it's not quite round, but that's okay. Now I'm going to be placing this here in the center, and I am going to back this onto some black cardstock like the other two. But I'm going to be placing, so I've got this from my ephemera assortment, I've got my camera. I'm going to be placing this on my ribbon as my closure. So I am going to need to place the ribbon here on the back side, kind of above this silver part in the middle, so maybe right about here. And then I'm going to place that magnet right there. And I'll place this one on top so you can see where it is on my piece. So it's right like that. And now I'm going to take this, I'm going to adhere this to some black cardstock, and then I will fussy cut around it with a small black border. Now I did go ahead and adhere my piece to the center of the flap. I have my second magnet on with the adhesive. And now I'm going to take my camera. I did slightly trim my ribbon because my camera, I don't want, it's a little bit smaller. I don't want the ribbon to stick out from the camera. So I'm going to have it be here. Now I've got my magnet onto my ribbon. For this one, I'm just going to apply adhesive to about a 1/2 inch, maybe 5/8 of an inch on the top portion of my ribbon, and then place my camera right onto that ribbon. So now the ribbon and the magnet are on the camera, and I'll apply my adhesive to the back side here on the ribbon, the camera, and the magnet. And then I'll take my black cardstock piece and adhere this down. And for this one, because it's so small, I think I am going to leave a small black border around it when I fussy cut around my camera, just so that there's a little bit more to the magnetic closure. And there is my closure band. So the last thing I'm going to do is cut strips for the outside pieces here. I'm just going to be cutting 1/2 inch strips, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the inside, because for the rest of this, the photos are going to be here, so we don't need to have the whole entire piece covered. Now for the front of my flaps here, I've used some of the flower paper that I found. So these are just cut to 4 inches by 1/2 inch, and I've rounded the bottom corners. You will notice in here I have a 3/8 inch strip of some aqua or teal colored cardstock. This is just from my stash from Michael's. I didn't quite have enough of the decorative paper. I probably could have pieced some of this to put in here, but I just chose to use this instead, because I also chose to use it up here on the tops of all these flaps. So these are 4 inches by 1/2 inch, and then the tops are rounded on those. So I did that on each of the spaces between and on these tops of each of my flaps. Then for my center panel, I am using this film strip paper from the Mintay collection. I just had some scraps of it. They are 4 inches by 1/2 inch, and then I've rounded the bottom corners. So all of these flaps have some of the film strip. And then just like on the left-hand panel, I have a 3/8 inch by 4 inch strip between these pieces. And then on these tops, I have a 4 inch by 1/2 inch strip of the aqua paper with the top 2 corners rounded. Then over here, I have some more of my floral paper. I was able to get enough to do these. They are 3 inches by 1/2 inch, and the bottom corners are rounded on those. And then 3/8 of an inch, or 3 inches by 3/8 of an inch for the pieces between the flaps, and then 3 inches by 1/2 inch for the pieces on the top with the top 2 corners rounded. So this is all of the inside flaps that are covered. And now if I close this, I'm just going to bring this up for a minute. You will see that there is enough room in there for both of my panels to fit. And then when I bring this one up, once this is tied, it will actually stay closed. It's just popped up a little bit now, not because there's not enough room, but just because of the way the chipboard is, it's not bent quite far enough. So, oh, there it goes. So it will lay flat. It will not bulge up like this. So it has enough room for all of those flaps. Now I am going to go ahead and tie this in a bow to close my folio. Now the final thing I am going to do is I have from my stash, I just have some Prima flowers. These are from Scrap and Create, so they may still have these on the website. I'm just using one of these. I'm going to place this up here, and then I've got these two little tiny flowers. I think they're 49th in market, but I'm not sure. I'm going to place those just along here. Somewhere I have to just kind of figure out where I like the look of them, and I'm going to do that to complete my album. So that is all for the tutorial. And if you have followed along this far and watched the video, I am also going to be doing a subscriber giveaway. So as a thank you and as a happy International Scrapbook Day, I'm going to be giving this little photo folio away to one subscriber who leaves a comment for me in the comment section below about the album or what you're going to do with it if you win, any kind of comment related to this project. Then I will randomly pick a winner using a random comment generator so that it is fair. The only thing is that it will have to be someone from the US because unfortunately international shipping is really expensive. So feel free to leave me a comment if you are interested in possibly winning this little photographer folio. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.